Lauren Giddings was the pride of her Maryland family. At 27, she had come further than anyone could have dreamed, graduating from Mercer University's prestigious law school in Georgia. She had dedicated countless hours to her studies and was just days from taking her bar exam. Yet her mind was elsewhere, feeling a strange tension simmering in the background of her otherwise ordinary days. Living at Barrister Hall Apartments for 3 years had once been convenient and safe, right across from her classes. But recently, her apartment felt less like a home and more like a place where she was being watched. She wasn't one to jump at shadows, but lately things felt different. She would come home to find her belongings slightly rearranged, as though someone had been inside. Though these sensations would send chills down her spine, Lauren dismissed them, brushing it off as her mind playing tricks. After all, she was moving to Atlanta next week, starting a new life. In just a few days, everything would change. But on June 26, 2011, that move came too late. Lauren Giddings had been exhausted that Saturday. Between study sessions and wrapping up loose ends before her move to Atlanta, every day seemed to stretch longer than the last. That evening, she spent time with a few friends, eager to relax and momentarily forget about the relentless bar exam prep. But as she returned to her apartment, unease washed over her. The feeling was so overwhelming that she sent a late-night email to a close friend, admitting how unsettling it was to stay in her apartment alone. Something was off. Maybe it was just nerves, she thought. It would all be behind her soon enough. That email would be the last anyone would ever hear from Lauren Giddings. When Lauren's friends couldn't reach her the next week, they figured she was buried in studies. But by Wednesday, her silence had grown too alarming to ignore. One of her classmates called the Macon Police Department requesting a welfare check. When officers arrived, they found her door shut. Nothing visibly out of place through the window, no signs of forced entry, and no answers from inside. Days had passed. Lauren's car remained parked outside, her wallet, cell phone, and keys untouched. Inside her apartment, friends found her personal belongings exactly where she'd left them, as if she'd just stepped out for a moment. Stephen McDaniel, the quiet, reserved neighbor who lived just next door and often kept to himself, joined them, seemingly just as concerned as everyone else. "I can't believe she'd go anywhere without telling someone," her classmate muttered, searching for any sign that Lauren had simply left on a whim. But as they looked around her neatly arranged space, one thing stood out. A door jammer security bar, meant to wedge under the handle for safety, lay unlatched and abandoned on the floor near the door. It was unlike her to leave it there. She was always cautious. Something was deeply wrong. By Thursday morning, Lauren's friends were in a panic. Desperation grew as news of her disappearance spread, and soon enough local reporters swarmed Barrister Hall. Stephen McDaniel, dressed in a loose shirt and unkempt curls, stepped forward, seemingly eager to assist. When the camera turned his way, he speculated that Lauren might have been snatched while on a run, his wide eyes filled with apparent concern. But just as he spoke, a police officer appeared on the scene, his face grave. The officer had just checked one of the large wheeled garbage bins outside. A powerful stench had drawn him to it, and what he discovered turned the case in a horrific new direction. Inside a large black garbage bag was the torso of a young woman, her body brutally dismembered. The reality of what had happened to Lauren hit the group like a physical blow. Yet it was Stephen's reaction that truly sent chills through everyone who watched. Standing just feet away from the reporters, he froze, his face blank, his eyes vacant. When one of the reporters asked him if he was okay, he stammered and mumbled, "I think I need to sit down." He moved a few steps away, his entire demeanor shifting as he stumbled to the ground. That was the first time Stephen McDaniel became more than just a concerned neighbor in this investigation. His performance was too dramatic, his demeanor too unsettling for mere shock. Police began taking notice. That afternoon, investigators decided to bring Stephen in for questioning. Seated across from Detective Patterson in a stark gray interrogation room, Stephen's behavior turned peculiar. He appeared disheveled, his eyes glassy, his hands jittering. His answers were clipped and strange, with constant nervous glances around the room. His story twisted and circled, barely coherent. When asked about a scratch on his face, he claimed he must have scratched himself in his sleep. When questioned about a similar scratch on his torso, he offered the same excuse. Detectives soon began pressing him harder. His demeanor grew erratic, his robotic answers now delivered in a monotone that didn't match the situation. His eyes stayed wide, unblinking, as if lost in some other reality. "We found blood in your bathroom, Stephen," one detective lied, hoping to shake his composure. But Stephen simply stared back, unflinching. There was something deeply unsettling about him, as though he were more machine than man, hollow and unfeeling. When asked about his relationship with Lauren, he described her as a nice girl, but was vague, unsure. Detectives tried to read him, but he kept slipping away, his responses often limited to, "I don't know," "I don't understand," and "no." When detectives requested to search his apartment, Stephen didn't ask for a lawyer or a warrant. He didn't protest. He simply agreed, leading 4 detectives across the hall to his room. Inside, they found an odd collection. Shelves filled with swords, guns, stacks of canned food, and rows of toilet paper as though he were preparing for some apocalyptic event. In a nightstand drawer, they found an unsettling surprise: a pair of women's underwear with holes cut into them. As they continued to search, they came upon a flash drive containing photos taken inside Lauren's apartment, pictures that Stephen had somehow managed to capture without her knowing. Even more chilling was a homemade video from his camera. In the footage, Stephen had attached his camera to a long pole and extended it up to Lauren's window, recording her inside her apartment. The pieces were falling into place, painting a terrifying picture. Stephen McDaniel wasn't just an odd, reclusive neighbor. He had been obsessively watching Lauren, his attraction transforming into something sinister. Finally, months after Lauren's death, with undeniable evidence mounting against him, Stephen McDaniel wrote a confession. On the night of June 26th, he admitted he had used a stolen master key to enter her apartment at 4:30 a.m. He was masked and gloved, lurking in the shadows, watching her sleep. But as he took a step forward, a floorboard creaked, and Lauren woke, startled and confused. In a panic, she yelled, "Get the hell out!" That moment sealed her fate. Stephen threw himself on her, his hands closing around her throat. They tumbled from her bed to the floor, her legs trapped against the side of her bed, keeping her from kicking him off. She fought hard, scratching his face, grabbing at his mask. She managed to pull it off and recognized him, her wide eyes filled with fear and disbelief. "Stephen, please stop," she gasped, but he didn't let go. He strangled her, ignoring her pleas, his grip tightening as he watched the life drain from her. By the time Stephen was finished, Lauren was gone. He meticulously carried her body to the bathtub, taking his time. He left her there, returning to his apartment to wait. Hours passed, and he returned to dismember her body. With a hacksaw, he severed her arms, legs, and head, placing them in black garbage bags. He disposed of the parts in a nearby dumpster, all except for her torso, which he left in a trash can just outside the apartment complex. Over the next few days, he went through the motions, joining the search for her, performing in front of the cameras. In his mind, he told himself it was a bad dream, a delusion, some warped reality where Lauren was still alive, and he was just another worried neighbor. But Lauren Giddings was gone, and nothing could undo what he'd done. In 2014, Stephen McDaniel sat in court, facing life without parole until at least 2041. His calm, eerie demeanor had barely changed since his arrest. In the courtroom, he expressed regret, but it was as hollow as his gaze. His true emotions, if he felt any, remained locked away in a mind twisted by obsession, selfishness, and cruelty. For Lauren's family, the sentence was little comfort. A life full of promise had been extinguished by a man she barely knew, a man who could not bear the thought of her slipping away into the life she had worked so hard to build. This tragic case serves as a haunting reminder of how little we may know about those who live beside us. Lauren Giddings was on the brink of her dreams, but Stephen McDaniel's obsession ensured those dreams would never be realized. It is a story that leaves us unsettled, questioning the unknown darkness that can hide behind even the most familiar faces.
Lauren's story teaches us the importance of trusting our instincts. She sensed something was off, and this feeling wasn't just a fleeting thought, it was her intuition sounding an alarm. Her experience is a reminder that if something doesn't feel right, we should never ignore that sense. Sometimes personal safety relies heavily on listening to that inner voice and taking precautions. Another important takeaway from this story is to communicate with friends and family consistently, especially when living alone. Lauren's friends and family took swift action when she went silent, emphasizing the importance of having people who know your routines and can check in if something seems wrong. Setting up regular check-ins can be a life-saving habit. This case also highlights the value of personal home safety measures. Investing in small security tools like door jammers or portable alarms can be a simple yet effective way to add an extra layer of security. In a similar vein, it's essential to be aware of those around you. If someone's behavior makes you uncomfortable, keep a distance and don't hesitate to mention it to someone you trust. If you ever notice anything unusual, like items out of place or signs of an intrusion, don't brush it off. Document these details and consider notifying building management or local authorities. It's better to be cautious than to overlook potential red flags. Lastly, in our connected world, be mindful of what you share on social media. Avoid posting personal details that could reveal your routines or locations, as these details can easily be tracked by those with harmful intentions. Lauren's story urges us to keep our guard up and be proactive about our safety. By learning from her experience, we can all make changes to protect ourselves and those around us. If this story resonated with you, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing to stay connected for more true crime stories and safety insights. Stay vigilant and stay safe.